participation at the Community Center for June the 3rd, 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today we'll have two meetings, one being the Committee of Adjustment and the second being the Advisory Committee. And the Committee of Adjustment will be one minor variance application for consideration by the Committee of Adjustment. And there'll be two consents for the Advisory Committee to provide comments to the Land Division Committee. So please note that the meeting is video and audio recorded, and all electronic meetings are uploaded to Ms. Pella's YouTube page. By registering to participate in the meeting by electronic means, you are consenting to have your likeness and your comments recorded and posted on YouTube. So we'll start with roll call. Dennis O'Connor.
Present.
Paul Sedra.
Present.
And Chris Picard.
Present.
And I, Council John Spruce, present as well. So let's do a moment of reflection. Thank you. So let's move on to the agenda. I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the agenda of the Committee of Adjustment. Moved by Dennis, second by Chris. All in favor? Thank you. And do we have a disclosure of interest? None. Okay, thank you. And may I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of May 9th, 2023? Move all, second by Dennis, all in favor? Thank you. Sure.
The resolution reads that the Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes from the meeting held May 9th, 2020.
All right, so now we're into the application for minor variance or permission under Section 45 of the Planning Act. And I'll go through the process. The purpose of the hearing is to inform and provide the public the opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to minor variance application before us today. The township requests you please notify the secretary of the committee by email at linbanks@postal.ca. The viewer should be on record and would like to be notified of future hearings of decisions regarding the application. Format of the hearing is as follows. Staff will present the information report, specifically outlining the purpose of the application, summarizing compliance with the township's notification submission requirements, and outlining staff's comments. The applicant will then present the purpose and details of application and any further relevant information. Following this, the public can obtain clarification, ask questions, express their views on the proposal. You will have 10 minutes to speak. Following this, members of the committee can likewise obtain clarification and ask questions. The committee will deliberate the application and render a decision. Decision will be subject to the 20-day appeal period. Okay, right, so do we start with the first one?
Certainly. So the first application is an application for minor variance or permission under Section 45 of the Planning Act to be heard by the committee on this date. Minor variance application D13 JOH. John Johnston, 12 Jasper Heights, Lot 5, Plan 61M203 in the Township of Westland, requesting relief of new comprehensive zoning bylaw 23-2018 as amended from Section 14, site-specific special provision number 86. The purpose and effect is to provide relief from Section 14 to permit an increase in lot coverage from 33.1% to 37.8% to allow for the addition of a cover over the existing deck.
Please, Courtney, I should introduce all the staff here. From the county planning, we have Joanna Salzberg and Savari Valdez, who are in. And from the township, we have Courtney Horsbox, who is clerk and interim CAO, and Lynn Banks beside me is the secretary of the committee. So, Courtney, would you please put up the screen of the drawing, and Lynn, would you please summarize the application, notification, submission requirements, following staff, agency, and public comments and recommendations?
Certainly. Notice of the application was given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Notice requirements for the application have been met and the following comments were received. The Township's Building Department stated that they have no concerns with the increased lot coverage and further advised that any technical comments will be made during the building permit process, which will be required for the new roof structure / deck. Fire Department advised that providing the appropriate building permits are obtained, the department has no concerns. The Township's Public Works Department had no concerns, and Source Water stated that since this property is located in a vulnerable area, but the activities as indicated would not create a significant drinking water threat, the application can be screened out and does not require a section 59 notice under the Clean Water Act. The GRCA advised that they have no objections to the application.
Courtney, could you flash through the plan view where it shows the deck? Yeah, that's the one. This maybe zoom out so we can see it. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so with the applicant, please come and the delegate chair and give us your presentation, summarizing what you're looking for and any new information that you want to convey to us. Please state your name for the record.
John Jones,
Great, and your address?
12 Jasper Heights.
Great, thank you very much. So go ahead, speak to it.
Well, as you can see, number 12 there, where we live, we have the river at the back of us, but it is, it's like a furnace in the summertime. And we have tried temporary shelters, and they really don't work very well. We have tried umbrellas. We have went through about 3 of them up to now. It is a wind tunnel. So what we're trying to do is to put something that we can go out and enjoy the summer. Really, that's basically what it is.
Good. Great. So, Lynn, are there any registrants who request to speak on this item?
No, Mr. Chair, there are not.
And Courtney, would you please see if anybody in the audience would like to speak to this item?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we have anyone joining us virtually.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's turn it over to the committee members. Dennis, you have any questions of the applicant?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Paul
No, I'm fine, thanks.
and Chris,
Nothing from me, thank you.
and I'm fine as well. So let's get into the actual document to the decision. So again, we either approve, oppose, or ask for deferral. And then is it your or my read of this? Sure.
In the matter of section 45 of the Planning Act as amended, a new comprehensive zoning bylaw number 23-2018 as amended, an application for a minor variance requesting an increase in lot coverage from 33.1% to 37.8% to allow for the addition of a cover over the existing deck.
Okay, great. So let's go on the table. Dennis? Approve. Okay, Paul? Approve. And Chris?
I approve.
And I approve as well. So if it's approved and it's subject to a 20-day appeal period, if somebody may want to object to it at that time, they got to go through formal process. So they have to be 20 days before the decision is finalized.
Okay.
Officially. Okay, you're done. Sure, let's do the work.
Thank you.
The resolution is that the committee approved minor variance application B13-JOH with no conditions.
Okay, I'm moving a second for this. All in favor, second, Dennis, all in favor? Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on to the new business of the agenda. We have Committee of Adjustments report 2023 to 22/2026, Committee of Adjustment Goals and Objectives. So I guess, Lynn, we have to bring it in, or do we your new process?
Maybe Mr. Fox can provide some clarification.
I'm not sure if anyone's having a hard time hearing, so I'm going to use the microphone. So through you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee, we have our committee goals and objectives, which the committee heard a presentation on from our treasurer director of finance at a previous meeting. And so part of that process is to canvass the committee members on any goals or objectives that they'd like to see for the remainder of the term or on an annual basis, whichever is applicable for the goal. So staff did receive some information from the committee members related to some proposed goals and objectives. And so the report on the agenda is to outline what those are and to get approval from the committee so that staff can forward those to council for further endorsement. And then those form kind of the basis of the goals and objectives for the committee for the remainder of the term. So the report does highlight those in a chart form, I believe, as well as just listing a few of the, I guess, overshadowing goals in general for the committee. And I'm happy to share those on the screen, Mr. Chair, if that's helpful.
Sure. My eyes is out of focus.
Is that better?
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thought you were giving us some answers. Okay, so, any comments, suggestions for the goals? We'll start with you, Dennis.
No, I have no comments.
Okay, Paul,
No.
Chris?
No, I thought they were good.
Okay, let's switch down to the goals. So the goals is first one is the annual bylaw legal training review. So staff will draft a training schedule. Any timing on that? Should we put some timing on it when you plan to do that, or is that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, staff are hoping to onboard our new planner. And then I think part of what we would like to do is look at this as maybe a first opportunity to come to the committee and provide that training. So likely fall or early winter, but we're thinking we could do some of this by year end for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Does any committee members have any suggestions or what we should like to see first in the way of training?
No, I'm pretty familiar with it right now.
I mean, just kind of around, I know we had that bylaw review a few years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe a refresher around that.
Okay.
But, I mean, it would allow us, it'll help us going we're looking at this stuff. You just kind of go over changes that we have. And just to add, I know there's a lot of changes right now, just with provincial government going, so maybe just like ongoing updates a little bit as to what's happening, sure, would be good, I think, because there's just so much change. Or just at least literature kind of out in the press even, so.
I'm hoping the planner, when it comes on board, is going to feed us with
Yeah,
the information that we're.
I think that's key, that
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
that's
so-
relevant, we should know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm assuming the first meeting, he gives us an overview and that might spawn more, Cheryl's talking about. We might want to be more in depth, but right now.
Chris?
I think I'm echoing Paul, all the changes at the provincial level around planning policy. An overview of that and what it means to push, which would be very helpful.
The only comment I've got is, I think last time around, we had sort of a take your own course to do with, committee of the holes. Like the thing, desktop exercise, was wondering if that could be, to, I know we got 2 new members, that might be helpful for them to, familiarize themselves with it. Okay, so let's move into this process improvement. Subcommittee to draft questionnaire for circulation to agents and property owners to be reviewed by staff of the committee. So, comments, Dennis?
No, I think that's straightforward.
Well,
Yeah, I agree with Dennis. I think that's true.
okay, and, Chris?
No, I agree. To me, it's a straightforward one and it's a good one.
Okay, so my only suggestion, 2 things. First of all, we should at the end of each meeting, just have a quick recap if there's any issues there, so we can have a running tally. In other words, for the subcommittee to go at year end and to troll through all the individual ones would be a little bit onerous. Rather, this way, we just reported that this should be looked at by the subcommittee at year end, so flag it as we go along, so it'll be easier for the subcommittee. The other thing is going to suggest there's 2 subcommittees required, so I'm going to suggest that we have there's four members, and we have 2 members on each subcommittee. So I was wondering if there's anybody who'd like to be on this subcommittee versus the other one, which is to review the housekeeping amendments. Any preference there?
No, still very.
Fine either way.
Okay, Chris?
I'm good with either one. Thank you.
Okay, so let's do the table. This table will do the first subcommittee, that table will do the second subcommittee. Right? Sounds good. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Staff to identify training opportunities. I guess I sort of touched on that for committee members, so that's sort of part and parcel of the training. And then the next one is staff to work with from subcommittee to work with staff to review applications received previous year and make recommendations for housekeeping commitments annually. Well, there might be some stuff that's we think it's clear, but we get into discussing it. Each one of us interpret things differently. We should have to clarify. I know I had hardship with these storage crates type of thing. Trying to find the exact wording in the document, and then unfortunately just said it's here. It'd be nice if we could sort of consolidate. That's something that the subcommittee should do that. Maybe. Okay, all right, if we're good with this one, so I have a resolution then.
Certainly. That the committee approves Committee of Adjustment Report 2023-002 as presented. The subcommittees breaking down, the first subcommittee will be Dennis O'Connor and Chris Picard, and the second subcommittee will be Paul Sadra and Jeffrey.
I have a mover and a second. Chris, second by Dennis, all in favor? Thank you very much. All right, so let's go on number 9, adjournment of Committee of Adjustment at 7:19. We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Paul, seconded by Dennis, all in favor? Thank you. So let's move into the next meeting. So I'll let you go to this one. Okay, so we'll get into this committee now, and opening remarks. Good evening, welcome to the Planning Development Advisory Committee. There'll be 2 consents for the advisory committee to come out and comment on. And please note that the meeting is video audio recorded, and all persons and all in-person electronic meetings are uploaded to the municipality's YouTube page. By registering to participate in the meeting, you by electronic means are consenting to have the likeness and comments recorded on posted on YouTube. So we'll do roll call, Dennis O'Connor,
Present.
Paul Sedgwick,
Present.
and Christopher King.
Present.
Okay, and I have Council Johnson Poulos as present as well. Are there any conflicts of interest?
Yeah.
Okay, there are no delegations, I assume. Okay, so let's do the consent agenda. So we have the approval of minutes of May the 9th, 2023. Moved by the secretary, moved by Dennis, second by Chris. Oh, Chris, okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And other consent items, do we have any other consent items?
No, Mr. Chair.
We don't. Okay, are there notice of public meetings and hearings?
There's nothing coming up at the moment.
Okay, and reports. So let's get into the actual reports and we'll start with 9.1.1. Lot line adjustment application B40-23, also known as D10 BED. Ahara Badirian and Nikki Simon Nitu, part lot 5, concession 3, municipality municipally known as 6598 Wellington Road 34, Township Postage. Proposed lot line adjustment is 46 meters by 90 meters, 4.4 hectares, vacant land to be added to budded rural residential lot for Steve and Lisa May. Retained parcel of 7.6 hectares with 381 meter frontage, existing proposed rural residential use, agricultural use with existing dwelling. So I'd just like to advise that if anybody watching this hearing would like to give comments or have questions regarding the application, they can be heard at the Land Division Committee, which I believe is scheduled for July the 20th. So let's go on to the first issue. Can you flash it on the board, please? Courtney? And we have the owner applicant come forward and do the presentation. For afternoon.
Good evening, Chair and council members and staff. It's nice to see Joanna again. She fled hearing for the Great Lakes of the county, but we'll forgive her for that. My name's Rod Finney. I'm a land surveyor and I'm the agent for the Badirians and Mr. Meyer.
Go ahead, present the application.
Basically, this is a lot line adjustment. It's not a very complicated thing. There is no new lot being created. There is no development proposed. The lot itself is a hardwood bush and it is protected. It's a significant woodland. It's just a matter of trying, if you look at the diagram there, you can see, well, I don't know, my eyes are not as good as they used to be, but it's about 10 meters from the existing house going sort of in a southeasterly direction to the existing property line. And that for a house of that size and style, it's not really, it's not inappropriate. It's consistent with the zoning bylaw, but both the owners of the house and the parcel, the retained parcel, have come to an agreement that they're willing to transfer some additional lands to the owners on Wellington Road 32. It's a hardwood bush, as I said. There is no development proposed. And so this is basically just a technical change in the boundary between the two properties. If there's any questions or any further information you'd like, I'll try and provide it to you.
So were there any agency comments received?
No, Mr. Chair, we cannot receive agency comments. If you have township comments?
Okay, do you have any registrants who want to speak on this?
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, so no written comments. Okay, so let's turn it over to committee members next.
Maybe this is for planning staff, but can this we're basically adding another lot on here size. Can that be severed down the road in 5 or 6 years?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that this lot has already had one severance on it, so in terms of that secondary agricultural designation is restricted from another severance at this point within policy. Noting that down the road, like that date may change, so there is a possibility that this lot could be proposed to be severed. There is a significant woodland on the property, so it's within the Greenwood systems, there are restrictions to that. However, the lot size is the minimum lot size required with the zoning bylaw. Planning staff within the review of this application at the county level is looking to the request that lot area be reduced in size. To address concerns similar to that, and also to the fact that the lot is a significant woodland as well.
Okay, that was my question.
Dennis asked the question. Thank you.
Following on that, comment, planning, how was the size of the lot to be transferred determined? Like, why is it, because you're also reducing the frontage on 32, as I understand, below the minimum bylaw requirements currently. That's a big piece of land to transfer, almost doubles the size of the current lot on 32.
Well, the frontage for the lot that the severance is coming off is actually on 34. So it's really, yes, it is impacting the frontage on 32 as well, but it is. I'm sorry, I can't say much more than that. It does reduce it definitely. Whenever you take a severance off, it does reduce the frontage on 32. However, as the planners have said, this is a significant woodland in the county official plan, and it receives a high degree of protection. So as she said, you can never guarantee what's going to happen in the future. At the same time, under the current planning regime in the county, it would be impossible to get another severance off there. And it would also not be possible to sever that parcel from the one that it's being joined to under the current planning regime. So nobody can give you guarantees for the future 100%, but I would say it's extremely unlikely during my lifetime.
Follow-up question, if I may, I think this is planning. If this were to go through, it's a big enough lot though that someone could put a second house, same lot, with an accessory dwelling on the expanded parcel in what is now a protected woodlot.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the property itself, if someone was to come for a building permit application, so it would be reviewed under the zoning bylaw. The property itself, if my understanding, and as the delegate has said, the application right now, as it's written, proposes no development within that area. And when we review lot line adjustments, we do look at what the proposal is for. If the proposal for the lot line adjustment included some form of development, the perspective may be slightly different in terms of requirements to show no negative impacts to the future of the property. But as my understanding is, at this point, they're not proposing development on this particular parcel. But in terms of zoning, they'd be looking to come with some requirements within the property. But we do consider what people say when they apply for these applications and say there's no development. So we're looking for information from the delegate as to what's proposed, and that they're giving us their proposal essentially on this property at this point. But as I said, if there was development proposed as part of this consent, there may be concern of how that may affect the feature. The only other thing I would add as well with the frontage comment is that because this lot is a corner lot, the way the township bylaw defines frontage is on the shortest side. So in this particular case, because the lot is coming off of that 32 and the lot is becoming narrower on that side, because it's a corner lot, the front lot line is considered the one along 32. So that's where that frontage compliance with the zoning bylaw comes from.
Last question for you then. Do you think the owners on 32 would be amenable to a condition that the wood lot is preserved?
I can't see why they wouldn't be. That is their whole goal. I mean, their lot itself right now is primarily woodland, except for the area where the house is. And that's what they like. There was, and I believe at least some of you were members of the committee last year, prior to the election, and we had brought forward an application for a severance that's off 34th, that the dark line on 34. And the reason we had initially looked at a severance off 32, but basically because of the woodland characteristics, it was decided that that was not an appropriate place to put it. There was an environmental impact study done, and it highlighted that it was a more appropriate area to take it off 34. So I think what the environmental impact study says, what the county bylaws says, what common sense says, it will continue to be woodland. Now, as I said before, I can never guarantee anything 100%, but that certainly is not, it's not the intent that I've been informed of to do anything other than act as a buffer to that house, because it is a very nice house. And it having some additional land with it will make it more attractive to anybody who lives there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in as well, in terms of a condition too, with conditions that are applied to consent applications, it's important to think about how those need to be satisfied, because the conditions have to be satisfied before the application is. So it's also making sure if that is a condition that the township is considering how that may be fulfilled. Noting that the consent would be finalized before like any development would be proposed at that point. So that's just something else that I would have.
Good, thank you. I'd like to follow up on Chris's initial question. What does it mean? What is the term that you want exactly 0.4 hectares? Why not 0.3? Why not 0.2? Why not have it such that the actual there's no need for a minor variance? I forgot what the number is. So 100, for this will be about 116 meters.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is it's 120 meters for lots over 4 hectares.
Okay, so this will be a 30 meters out. 30 meters, so that you've got like I can't read the actual.
Yeah, there's about 40. Yeah, I have to.
Yeah, so that's 40, and that will get reduced to by 30, so that's a 10 meter strip, so that would obviate the need for a minor variance. Instead of having 10 meters, you'd have 20 meters.
The area was agreed by the two owners. I really can't give you any more understanding why they felt that was, but that was what they felt was appropriate.
I guess I hear that under current regime, it's never going to be severed, but sometime in the future, it could be. Like we make a decision, we should make a decision for taking into account the future as well. So my suggestion is we reduce it such that it's less than an acre. I don't know how everybody feels on that. I would concur with that.
Yes.
Comfortable?
The way I see it, like just two parties made an agreement. If it's a neighbor and neighbor, if it's an acre, they made an agreement. I mean,
Well, I guess the concern I think we're having here is not now, maybe 20 years in the future, somebody will say, I'm gonna sever it, and that property owner to the north, he may sell his property sometime in the future. It's not a forever situation. And so the new owner might come in there and say, oh, I got a parcel I want to sever off type of thing. So I'm looking into the future to try to minimize the impact. So if we have it less than an acre, then there's going to be a lot more effort to go through to get that.
but we have a wooded lot. We'd have to still get, safe entrance. It would have to follow all the criteria in 20
Okay,
years.
if you could predict me what's going to happen in 20 years, then I'll agree with you. We can't predict that.
That's what I mean. It's gonna have to go through that process at that time. We can't really,
The process might change at that time.
yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, there's all kinds of legislative changes happening And it could be, legislation happening.
But it could change to a fact where they allow half acre lots, right? I'll challenge that even, so I think. That's my position here, I think I don't. I don't really agree with us implementing that, like if we're gonna reduce it by 10 meters, I think they have an agreement, it's there, it's a wooded lot. I drove past the house, it's a nice house, it made some sense.
Chris, comments?
I'd be in support of it being a smaller land transfer, trying to respect the interest to create a privacy buffer. For the house on 32, but the fact that it's a 4 hectare parcel, which means it, as I understand the current rules, meets the minimum lot requirements for a severable lot. And in the future, and that would say, as I understand, a significant woodlot at risk. That concerns me. Looking again down the road with you, John, or sorry, Chair, the 20-30 year timeline. I'm sympathetic to trying to give them a little more space of property on 32, but at that size with that minor variance, I'm gonna say I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay, Dennis, comments?
I would agree with you that a little bit smaller lot would make me more comfortable.
Okay, so, any suggestions on the size before we put it to a vote? 3/4 of an acre?
Yeah, I would think you cut it down to that, so that, and it also makes your frontage a little bit more closer to being where it should be. There's something to variance, even by knocking it down.
So, we have a variance of opinion on a condition, so, could you read the suggested condition, we're proposing is, words along the lines of, that the, severed lot to be 3/4 of an acre. As opposed to 1 acre. In order to protect, the future of the, woodlot. So we can read that, the last, move in a second.
Certainly. So the conditions will be, the first is the township
Or
standard.
can we do the third condition
Oh,
first? Yeah.
certainly, that the land to be severed be reduced to 3/4 of an acre as opposed to 1 acre to protect the future of the lot.
Okay, I move it for that. Seconded. Chris, moved by Dennis. Okay, those in favor of the suggested motion? Opposed? Okay, so that carries. So let's read all the other conditions and see if we can get a resolution.
First condition is that the owner satisfy all the requirements of the township of Portsmouth, financial and otherwise, including taxes paid in full and consent review condition clearance fee. The second will be that the owner apply for and receive minor variance for lands to be retained for the reduced lot frontage. And third, that the owner demonstrate to the satisfaction of the township that there will be no negative impact on the woodland or its ecological functions. And the last condition will be that lands to be severed are reduced to 3/4 of an acre as opposed to 1 acre to protect the future of the woodlot.
Okay, so have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Ben, seconded by Chris. All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
So we have a resolution.
Certainly that the committee approved consent application B 40-23, subject to the conditions listed in the comments.
Okay, mover. Ben, seconded by Chris, all in favor? Thank you. All right, so let's move on to the next one. 9.1.2. lot line adjustment application B 3523, also known as D10 MCQ, Beverly Plain, part lot 32, concession 8, municipally known as 107 Queen Street, Township of Worcester. Proposed lot line adjustment is 4,980 square meters with 60-meter frontage, existing urban residential land to be added to abutting parcel for future development. Tiffany Development Corp. Retained parcel is 2,716 square meters with 37-meter frontage, existing proposed urban residential use with the existing dwelling. According, could you just put the plan up and Lynn, were there any agency comments?
Mr. Chair. There are no agency comments received. We do have comments from the township's building department. And their comments are basically as is the existing shed going to be removed as it appears to be the proposed property line will go through it. And they would also like to identify the location of the septic system on the retained land to ensure that the property line is at least 3 meters from the existing septic system.
Okay, great. So we'll have the agent please come forward to the application. Okay, please state your name and for the record, address.
Certainly. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee, staff. My name is Brandon Llewellyn. I'm a land use planning consultant with GSP Group, located in Kitchener, 72 Victoria Street South. Lynn has my full contact information. I've got a short presentation I put together just to help walk through what the purpose of the application is. So, next slide, please. So the subject property is located in south of Marston, within the settlement limits. The property is designated residential in the official plan. And it is sort of the southern development limits of the current settlement boundary. The property itself is shown on the map in front of you, outlined in red. And just for context, I've identified the location of the somewhat recent Stewart Landing subdivision, because this was sort of used as part of the rationale in terms of the proposed lot size that's being requested. So that's just for some context. On the next slide, you can see the proposed severance, or the proposed lot addition, I should say. It's proposed that approximately 1.2 acres is severed for a lot addition to the adjacent land to the north. The adjacent land to the north is zoned future development zone and is intended for future residential development. There are no current active applications in front of the county or the township on that land, but I can advise that they will be coming. Now, that's not to sway this application, but it's the real purpose of this application is to add additional land to that property to the north. And then to retain a parcel for the existing home and the existing homeowner to remain on the site. The parcel to be retained has been reduced in size to approximately 2,700 square meters or 0.67 acres. The size of that has been determined through trial and error and through looking at again that Stewart Landing subdivision as sort of examples of past development within the community. Originally, our first application was proposing to sever 3 lots or sever 2 lots and have a total of 3 lots in this location with frontage directly onto the highway. MTO took a quick look at that and told us that wasn't a good idea and something that they would not be supportive of. So we went back to the drawing board and reconfigured the application so that it's now what sits in front of you. So the existing lotting, the existing home would remain. The one driveway access to the highway would remain. And the land to be severed would be joined to the lot to the north. And any future development plans will have to figure out how it will be accessed and if there's, new public roads or so on, but there would be no more direct access directly to the highway from the land to be severed. Hearing the comments from the building department with respect to identifying the location of the septic and either relocating or removing that metal shed makes sense and completely understand that. On the next slide, this is just a summary of the request. So the required lot frontage for within the UR zone is 18 meters. The retained lot would have 37 meters of frontage. The lot addition, I've noted it as 60 meters, but really again, it's greater than that because it's being added to the adjacent parcel to the north. The lot area requirements are 4,000 square meters. So the retained lot would be undersized and a future zoning bylaw amendment application would be required. And it would be my suggestion that it'd be appropriate to have that as a condition of approval of the severance. We understand that, well, in fact, a zoning bylaw amendment application was also previously submitted and kicked back at the same time as the severance application from the MTO. And we're waiting on their further comments on the revised application prior to that zone change application coming forward again. We had intended on running them somewhat parallel, but although also knowing that the different bodies are making the final decision on this. So I do recognize that the retained lot will be undersized, but that a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment would be applied for, and that would be a reasonable condition of consent approval. The lot addition, again, is sufficiently sized, and it's in fact well oversized because it's being added to the property to the north. And then the one other special request that would come forward in the zoning bylaw amendment application is to permit a commercial or a professional office as an additional use to a residential use of that property. Again, that's for information at this point. That application is not in front of you tonight, but that's just to let you know the full scope of the applications that had been filed, then pulled back because of the MTO comments and will be coming forward again. So next slide, that sort of completes my presentation, and I just I like to leave the graphic on the questions page just for something to refer to if there are any questions from.
Thank you. I'll start going around.
A couple of things, you have a little hook there in the top of the proposed lot. Why wouldn't we just make that square?
Yeah, good question. We looked at different ways to consider it, and when we look at future development opportunities, there's some conceptual plans that we have on the future lands that could better utilize that sort of triangle to make other future development plans sort of work a little more efficiently. And I know that's somewhat unclear when those plans aren't in front of you, but that was sort of the rationale for it. That, as I said, there will be future Planning Act applications coming forward on that land. So the configuration of the retained parcel has been vetted, from that aspect.
Okay, so if this is being added to the bigger parcel, the bigger parcel has a plan. Why wouldn't we just go to the way 0.4 hectare and make life easy?
On the retained parcel?
Yeah,
So
on the separate parcel, make it 0.4 instead of.
Essentially, for two reasons. One, the existing landowner doesn't want a big property anymore and would be satisfied with the reduced parcel. It's been sized to be similar in size to the lots that have been approved at the Stewart's Landing subdivision. And then also the additional land that's being added to the north can be better utilized with the more area available to it in the future. Again, I appreciate the difficulty that's an application that's not before you now, but it is to maximize the efficiency in the future, I think is the simplest answer.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Well,
Maybe this is a question for yourself or planner. The future land, is that residential development zoned or like what's the intention there? Do you have an idea?
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is the property is within a future development two zone and currently has a holding provision on it. With the holding provision, speaking to MTO no longer, I guess, opening that road on that the property currently has access to. So it's not residential zoned at this point.
Okay, so do we have an idea like what the development's gonna look like there? Is it residential or is it like your proposal that's gonna possibly come in the future?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So the property is zoned future development. It is designated residential. And the future development would be a subdivision, a residential subdivision housing.
Thank you.
Couple of questions. And I've only seen this from the road as I go by it, but the site plan doesn't show an awful lot of existing structures. Which I think is just a little bit of gap for me in considering this application. Because if I understand the site conditions properly, the current kennel actually straddles the proposed new lot line. Is the expectation that would be removed before this proposal would be approved in final form? Because there's a lot, and it looks like there are other structures behind the old school as well, from Google Maps. Because again, I'm not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak to that, the former kennel structures or any of the other sort of tired buildings on the property are intended to be removed. And that would be a reasonable condition of the consent approval that they are removed. Certainly with the zoning bylaw amendment that's coming forward, again, if they weren't removed, we'd have issues with zero setbacks and all the rest of it. So anything not associated with the former school or the dwelling now can be and will be removed.
Thank you.
But thank you for bringing that up. I didn't mean to explain that.
Do you know what the proposed professional office might be or would be?
The current proposal would be that the developer of the future development land may like to just have his office located there. So it'd be a dwelling. But you may have, basically it's the sole proprietor at this point, but you might like to have some staff and have the ability to have sort of a more formal office within a building that resembles a house and will likely contain, a dwelling unit as part of it. So it's aspirational at this time, but not set in stone.
Because one of the reasons I asked that question, Mr. Chair, of course, is parking and whether or not it's a question of balancing on a small lot, parking for an office with the well, with the septic, and everything else that goes with that. And has any work gone into that analysis to demonstrate it's feasible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't done a site plan of that. At this point, the property to be retained, the current owner is going to continue to live there. The professional office permissions would be sought not only on that property, but also on a portion of the future development lands. So that analysis can be done, and whether it happens here or on the new piece as part of the future development application has yet to be determined, but we did want to bring that forward as part of the zone change application at this point, since we're applying anyways, to be frank.
Thank you. And I take it then that you're also seeking to have the kennel use removed from the current list of acceptable uses because it's a special use right now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, that would be fine. It's certainly not intended to continue.
That covers it for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Big question. Why are we doing this now? Why not do everything as one whole package when you have your development phase? Your development application and everybody can see all the pieces now and that one makes sense. Now, you mentioned a couple of times that you're working on the development. proposal, things may change that you may want, less of that property or more, I'm not sure. Why are we worried about doing this now? Why not wait?
Fair question. The future development requires additional studies. There's a lot of environmental field work and other studies that have to go on in support of that. And in order to inform that plan and the limits of it, we wanted to do the severance now, so we know that parcel is this big to work with. And the limits are, say this is approved as is, then they know the limits of the future development parcel, they're set. Because again, we're just adding land to it. That development review process, it will be a separate application. But we need to know the size of the blocks we're working with for to simplify it. If we don't, all of the studies might reference the wrong property boundaries, or the property boundaries might not be fully confirmed, that type of thing. So knowing the limits of that future development now helps to establish the guidelines for all those studies.
Question of the current planning staff, does that make sense to you? Like if they get the severance now rather than treating this as one whole package?
Through you, Mr. Chair, people can apply for applications like at any time. It would allow us to understand what the proposal looks like in terms of what the delegate is saying in terms of what the final law configuration would look like. My understanding is there would be additional studies for other types of applications. But items like the items we're flagging at this consent stage in terms of things to be addressed, such as hydrological lot lines, even within the county official plan, items related to that, or even zoning compliance and all these other items. It would be helpful to understand that. However, like the applications can occur at different times, but it would help to address some of the questions, I guess, that we have with this application.
Question of township staff, what are your thoughts on this application? I noticed the checkbox is now checked whether yes or no.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think township staff shares the opinion of the planner. I think there's some unanswered questions in terms of what the overall plan is here. However, if this application does meet the requirements of what we need to see for a severance, it's also okay to look at this on its face and work through this. It seems as though some of the zoning concerns in particular would be addressed through the severance application in terms of zoning compliance. So again, I think there's nothing wrong with the way the applicant is proceeding. Either way it goes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so the one other, I think, important factor in that is that we need the ownership to be, that it's a lot cleaner if the ownership of the future development land is set and it's under one ownership versus two. So that way, when we're signing application forms or bringing reports forward, it's, it's one property owner, one draft plan of subdivision on one parcel of land.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I guess the way I see it is, we're very used to doing individual severances. And so if I'm building a home, I want to know how large my lot is before I'm going to build that house. Right? And so to your point, like they need to know where they're going to develop, and on an aside, quite frankly, we need the housing right now in this province. So I think this is a positive step in the right direction, and I think we should support it. If there's some issues we have that need to be addressed through studies and things that need to be done, that's great, but I think it's a positive step in the right direction. That's fine. Just wanted to be on the record for that.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments before we move on? Okay, so could you read the conditions that we have?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So the first condition would be the township standard condition that the owner satisfy all the requirements, financial and otherwise, including taxes paid in full and the consent review and condition clearance fee. The second condition would be that the existing accessory structures located on both the retained and seven parcels be removed to the satisfaction of the township. Third condition, that the owner identify the location of the existing septic system located on the retained lot to ensure that the new property line is at least 3 meters from the existing septic system. Fourth, that a hydrogeological study for the retained parcel be provided to the township by the owner for the purpose of a peer review to the satisfaction of the township and the county of Wellington, and that the owner shall be responsible for any township costs associated with the review of the hydrogeological study. The fifth condition would be that the owner enter into a development agreement with the township for the purpose of the peer review of the hydrogeological study to include third-party cost recovery. Sixth condition, that the owner obtains zoning compliance for both the retained and severed parcels to the satisfaction of the township. And the last condition, that the owner provide confirmation to the township that there is approved access to the retained parcel.
Now, all for this document, you say owner, are you representing the owner or and the developer at the same time?
I am, but I'm specifically here on this application on behalf of the owner as the authorized agent for him.
Okay, so, first time, do we support the application? Just go on, David. Thanks, sure.
Yeah, I agree with Paul.
Oh, this,
Yes.
very statement. Good.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm agreeing as well. So then we support the application. So, can you read the resolution? Sorry, you're asking that the hotel 3, 4, and 5 are conditions are satisfied with it.
Yes.
I need a comment from staff on that. Is that necessary?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the committee could consider deferring the application specifically related to some of those conditions related to the size of the lot. I think the lot is quite undersized than what we typically see for, basically that minimum lot area is to consider having private services like a septic system as well. In this property case, it's right under the 0.4 of a hectare size at 0.2. So if the committee could consider deferring the application to review a hydrogeological study to ensure that a septic system private services could function on a lot of this size because it's so undersized from what we would typically see. So I believe there's the 3 conditions, and it might be helpful, Lynn, too, if you could read them out, as well as that if that's something the committee is considering.
Procedurally, if we recommend deferring the application, when it goes to the county, what happens then? You guys are deferred until these 3 conditions are met, and then you accept. In other words, I don't want the applicant to have to come back for again.
Yep, so through you, Mr. Chair, typically what would happen is the committee will see that the township has recommended deferral and will consider that and make their decision. County staff may also recommend deferral for it until those conditions can be addressed. And then once everyone is satisfied, so if the conditions are to the satisfaction of the township, so once that's been satisfied, it goes back to the land division committee for a decision. You have your other conditions that are proposed as well, so those would still be on there. My understanding is, county land division staff may certainly say if there's anything else, but you've included the conditions that you're proposing and then also recommending deferral based off of certain conditions. So
I just don't want to have the applicant go through its whole process again.
Yeah.
Okay, so any comments on this deferral?
You like that process?
Thanks. So they don't have to come back here.
They don't have to come back, but it is the way it's kind of basically stated is they'll go there, they'll ask for deferral until those 3 conditions are met. And once those 3 conditions are met, they'll go straight back there for a decision.
That's why I have a quick question for Joanna. Then, you mentioned septic on a half-acre lot, 1.2. Is that like standard for us to include that? Because I mean, I'm just thinking of like Heritage Lakes. Like, we know that they're all half-acre lots. And they've got septic that are just fine.
yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, there have been lots in the past that have been severed at smaller sizes. The reason that the zoning bylaw has a minimum lot size is to make sure that that's the size that a septic can function at in terms of everyone's satisfied that a 0.4 of a hectare lot size can fit private servicing on it. Whenever we see lots that are undersized, there is some concern that it might not, and how that might affect the properties around in this particular property. So it is something that's typically looked at when we see lots that are undersized, especially in this situation where the lot is quite undersized from that 0.4 of a hectare.
Okay,
And the other thing is a clearance, in other words, a 3 meter clearance required, and, there's nothing here to show that. Okay, and Chris,
No, I'm in favor of the deferral approach.
okay, so you restate the resolution,
Certainly,
won't have to read the entire conditions. Okay.
that the committee supports the severance application B 40-23. But is requesting that it be deferred by Land Division Committee until township conditions numbers 3, 4, and 5 listed are satisfied.
Okay, mover and Stoker. Moved by Paul. Second. Dennis, all in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to, next item. Is. New business, 11.1, planning development advisory committee. Report 2023-002, to 2022-2026, planning and development advisory committee goals and objectives. So Courtney, if you can walk us through that again, and then we'll just close on, plays, I should say, on some questions.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is the same approach that was taken with the Committee of Adjustment goal setting for this term. It's based on a presentation that was received a few meetings ago by our treasurer. And again, it's the same approach that's taken with all of our advisory committees throughout the township. So this report includes the goals and objectives, and they're on the screen here for the committee's consideration.
Okay, Dennis, any comments on the goals?
I think this goes, it's right, stepping up and getting the education portion, and then we get our professional planner in here. to Keep us up to speed. I think that's going to give us a little more intelligent reference to these goals, right? Education is a big part of it.
And right now, we're sort of looking at goals, and the way you achieve your goals, you get into the objective, and objective sort of outline how to get there, and training would be one of the objectives. So the question here is any comments on the goal and any
The goals are
modifications?
similar to what we had. I agree.
Good, well,
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
I'm good. Thank you.
okay, so let's focus on the goals. Annual bylaw training, legislation training review, this starts with to draft a training review schedule for our applicant for all applicable bylaws and legislation and legislative requirements, so that's sort of fixed on what you're saying, Dennis. So any comments on that one?
One of the ones I'd like to see is helping us get to the right spot to get the information. We have a ton of bylaws and different legislations and not dating myself, but I'd like to have goals notes when I'm dealing with a MDS or whatever. Where is the applicable area that I can educate myself or get a review on that? So maybe the planning development person.
Yeah, well, we can amend that to say something like, training schedule for bylaws, and, provide associated, indexing
Yeah.
of same.
Yeah, I would like to see something like that.
Which you were gonna get us to say something on the MDS calculations. Well, here you are, here's the, actual MDS manual type of thing. There you go.
Yeah, if you want to read it in more depth, here's the quote.
Yeah.
In fence lines, all these things that we run into once in every 2 or 3 years, right? And rather than start from scratch, if we can get ourselves so we're got one chapter and said, well, hold on, we'll read.
Comments? Well,
Access to information.
Nothing from me, thank you.
okay. So, next one is development of key considerations, subcommittee to work with staff to develop a list of key considerations to consider when reviewing applications. Comments?
I think that's straightforward.
No?
Straightforward.
It's good. Okay, so it's great. Training opportunities, to identify training opportunities for the committee members. Comments? Opposed? Motion?
I think it ties into sort of the information.
Yeah, well, the reason I think why it's separate is, usually training opportunities involve cost type of thing, so we sort of highlight separately and so,
All these tied together. Only.
yeah, they do, they're all united, but we sort of break it down for legitimate reasons, say, well, one of the goals and objectives is training opportunity, we want to send somebody on a course to solve something.
Yeah, that's actually my one thought was around just collaborating with different committees and similar sort of townships. You
Yeah,
know, like,
there
and
is,
it's
yeah,
pretty
there is a.
cheaper too, right? It's just a way, an avenue to share ideas, kind of get to know what they're up to, what we're up to.
So there is a conference on, committee of adjustments.
Yeah,
And
something like that.
forgot what it was this year, but I think it's already passed or something. Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Certainly, I'm going. Chris, comment?
Yeah,
I'm taking that, okay, housekeeping amendments. Subcommittee to work with staff to review applications received in the previous year and make recommendations for housekeeping amendments annually. And again, my thought process on that is we sort of, at the end of each meeting, sort of recap, is there any issues that we should make sure we don't, we flag for housekeeping changes, whether it's a zoning bylaw or it's, some other document. Any comments?
That's a good idea. Is it possible that we put that in a little spot that we can go look at every once in a while versus having to go into staff or?
Well, is it possible that staff have a running list that we sort of have updated every quarter or so?
So through you, Mr. Chair, one of the things the staff is looking at related to this is either annual or biannual report that will summarize planning act applications in general. So I think we could tie that into what this committee is working on. And in addition, staff do make note of interpretations or things that come up when we're doing zoning reviews that may not quite fit what the bylaw is saying. And we have a running list of items that should be considered during the next housekeeping. So we can look at how to make that available to the committee as well.
Okay, comments? Yes, good, thanks. Okay, great. So again, we have two subcommittees. I'm going to suggest we keep the format of the committees the same. This table is the first subcommittee. That table is the second subcommittee, maybe consistent with dealing with the same sort of things. And do you have a motion for us, a resolution?
Certainly that the committee approves report number 2023-003 as presented.
And you want to add the committee structure?
Oh, and with the first subcommittee being Dennis O'Connor and Chris Picard, and the second subcommittee being Paul Sandra and Jeffrey Gore.
Good, I will move it. Chris, Dennis, all in favor? Good. All right, now we move to the fifth part of the agenda, adjournment. Now we're moving to second. Nobody's jumping. Yep. Chris, give it a second. Dennis, all in favor? Adjourns, meeting adjourns at 8:14.
Can we read out the resolution?
Sure.
So the Planning and Development Advisory Committee hereby adjourns at 8:14 p.m.
Okay, all in favor?